As you heard, I'm Mardi Harrison, and together with my partner and my husband of 38 years, we run Funding for Flippers. We kind of stumbled into private lending. We never really had anything to do with real estate before. We were entrepreneurs, and we ran a series of businesses over 35 years. Some of them were successful, and some of them not so much. But we got lucky, and the last one that we were in was very successful. And we sold it about 4 years ago. And we thought we would retire. So I describe myself now as a mostly retired attorney. We retired for almost 10 minutes. And then Don ran off to do mentoring of other entrepreneurs. And I thought, what am I going to do? I'd always kind of been interested in real estate, so I figured I'll go get my realtor's license. And then I'll get to go and see all those really beautiful multi-million-dollar homes in New Hope and Salisbury. That's all I really wanted to do was tour the homes. And that's what I did. And then I thought, well, now I've got a realtor's license. Maybe I should, try selling. What the heck? So I went looking for clients, and then I heard about DIG. And I thought, well, that's a great place to go looking for clients. All these people are buying and selling stuff. So we went to our first big DIG meeting. And what I found out really quickly was nobody needed me. Everybody either had a realtor that they had a good relationship with, or they were a realtor. Because, God made a lot of realtors. But what we did learn at that meeting was even more important. We found out what people really did need. They needed funding. And we had this money because we just sold our business. And from that, Funding for Flippers was formed. We've been lending now for about 3.5 years. We've done more than 100 deals. And we'd like, God willing, to do 100 more. So the question for this evening, well, first of all, how many of you attended the January Big Dig meeting at which I was a presenter? Okay, some of you. All right, I'm going to challenge you now to see how well you paid attention to me. I'm going to tell the same joke I told at the beginning. So, how many bankers does it take to screw in a light bulb? Who remembers? I see. Okay. Anybody want to take a guess? No, it takes some. Doesn't screw in by itself. It takes one. The banker holds on to the light bulb and the rest of the world revolves around him. And if any of you have ever tried to get a loan from a bank for a flip, you know what I'm talking about. It's not the bank's fault. They play a very important part in our food chain, but they really don't lend for flip projects. So, here we go. So what exactly is a private lender? Different people have different definitions. Steve, you might have a different definition, but the one that I work from is private lenders are people who use their own money to fund your flip projects. So who would be crazy enough to do that? Well, you got friends and family. Friends and family are great because they're not lending to make money. They're lending because they love you and they want to help you. And if they make a little money along the way, that's good. But mainly it's because they know you. They're not going to lend to you or you because they don't know you, but they'll lend to you because you're their cousin, you're their nephew, whatever. Well, that's the good news. It's the cheapest money you'll be able to find out there. Here's the bad news. They're friends and family. And everybody knows that the best way to destroy a friendship or to destroy a relationship in a family, what's the number one reason? Money. Yes, indeed. So before you borrow that money from Uncle Billy, you have to ask yourself two questions. How much do I like Uncle Billy? And how much would I miss him if he disappeared out of my life? Because if that project of yours goes south and you can't pay him back, that's what's going to happen. Okay. Seniors with investable retirement income. They don't actually have to be seniors. They just have to have investable retirement income. If you go to one of these sessions of the big gurus, you know, and you pay them, and there's a whole day, and then there's a weekend, and then there's a boot camp, here's what they'll tell you to do. They'll tell you there's people everywhere who have put their retirement savings into something safe, something real safe, like bonds or bond funds, or, you know, and they're getting 1 or maybe 2% interest on it now. If you could explain to them what a wonderful deal you have for them and offer them anything more, 6 or 8% or whatever, they'll be very happy with that, and you'll get the money you need for funding. Let me tell you, that's a lot easier said than done, because Don and I are retired. We have friends who are retired. We keep telling our friends about this wonderful investment opportunity that we've come across, and so far in 3 years, we haven't convinced a single one of them to try it. What the gurus will tell you is you have to bring a whole group of them together so you can make a presentation, because you can't go into senior living homes. You can't go into independent living homes or assisted living homes or 55-plus communities. They all have rules about soliciting. So you have to find a way to draw them out and make a group. So they recommend that you put together a luncheon. Now, when you get to be a person of a certain age, like I am, you get a lot of invitations to these luncheons. You get them from financial planners. You get them from people who want to sell you annuities. You get them from lots and lots of people. And depending on how good the restaurant was, I would go to a lot of these. I heard a lot of presentations. All sounded great. The way they structure it is you have to sit and listen to the presentation first, and then they feed you lunch. And at lunch, you're supposed to sit around the table with some other people there and talk about what a great opportunity you just heard about. Let me tell you something. I've sat at that table. They're not talking about what a great opportunity it was. They're ripping it to shreds. These people are not stupid, and they are not giving up their retirement investments easily. They want to be safe, they want to feel safe, and they're afraid of new things. That's not to say you... Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
They are there. They will talk it up, and they're like, yeah, that's a shelf with the speaker.
It's a hard sell. I won't say it can't be done, because you may be the world's best salesman, but it's a hard sell. Then there are professional private lenders. That's what Don and I think we are. And look how friendly we are. We are just sitting there waiting to meet you and give you money for your investment. Seriously, they're all around you. They may be hard to find. Much to our surprise, we've met a lot of private investors who don't want anybody to know that they lend money. I personally don't get that, because, you know, it's our aim to get our money working for us. In fact, if you go to the Big Dig meeting, you'll find us very easily, because we walk around wearing black T-shirts with neon green writing on it that says funding for flippers. But you won't find a lot of other people who do that, for whatever their reasons are. They want to keep their money close to the vest. But I would wager, well, we know there are a couple in the audience here tonight. They announced it. But if you go to the Big Dig meeting, you'll find even more. These are people who have been very successful in their real estate businesses, and they've accumulated a goodly sum of money, and now they want to put that money to work investing in other people, letting them do the work. You just have to find them. The next category are hard money lenders. I include them because often hard money lenders aren't lending their own money. They're lending other people's money, but the other people are giving their private money. The way hard money lenders work, they find people like Don and me who don't want to do the kind of work that Don and I do to make our loans. It can be very labor intensive. This is definitely not a passive investment. So they find people like us who got tired, and they take our money and put it into a big pot. They give us a return on our money, and then they mark it up so that they can make some money, and then they lend it to you. So hard money lenders should always be more expensive than private lenders, because now you have a middleman in there who has to take his cut. They can be very handy, though, especially for first-time investors, because you can't always find private lenders who'll be willing to lend to you. you need to get a couple of projects under your belt first to become more attractive, the hard money lenders will lend to you. You will pay an incredible lot of money for them, but you'll get to do your project. And you have to consider that a cost of doing business and factor it into your planning for the project. If your money's going to cost you 15% or 18%, or we know some hard money lenders where it's as much as 26%, you got to factor that in when you make your offer on that property, or you're going to come out of it with no profit. What are some differences between private lenders and hard money lenders? Well, on one side, you're going to have much higher rates from the hard money lenders, but they'll lend to you. On the other side is availability of cash. Private money lenders, by our nature, have a certain amount of money that belongs to us. And once we've lent that money out, then we don't have any available for new deals until some of those deals pay off and come back in. Hard money lenders, because they're accumulating a pot from lots and lots of people, have a virtually bottomless pit of money. So the likelihood is they'll always have money available to you when you need it. You okay back there? So that's the trade-off. You know, it's the rates versus the availability. Also, the qualification process. Hard money lenders often have qualification processes that look more like a bank. They have application fees, and they have appraisal fees, and they have, you know, all kinds of paperwork to fill out, and they do credit checks, and they do, you know, background checks and criminal checks, and you pay for all of that, by the way. Most private lenders that I know don't do that. I know Don and I don't do that. We don't even have an application. What we do is we do a very lengthy conversation with you. First thing we're going to want to do is get together at a Starbucks or a Panera and sit there for a couple of hours and talk. We want to find out all about you. We want to know, what have you done before? How many projects have you done if you have? What are your goals? Do you just want to do 2 or 3 flips a year, you know, for a little extra money? Or are you looking to make this a real business? And if so, how big a business? And what is your plan for getting there? And we will have a very, very detailed conversation. We also will want some references. Preferably, we like references who are other DIG members, because this is, when you get down to it, a fairly small community, and people know people, and reputations get around. So think about that whenever you do a project, because good or bad, reputations get around. So most private money lenders I know have a much more informal process than the hard money lenders and banks do. Deferral of interest. Don and I will defer the interest on a project until the end, and we'll get it all at the end from you. Our typical note is a 6-month note. We want you to keep the interest in your pocket during the course of the project, because you're going to need it, because we only fund on the sale price of the project. We don't fund renovation. So we want you to keep that money so you'll have a little more for the renovation, and we'll get it back at the back end. A lot of other lenders don't like to do it that way. They want to get their interest along the way. In case something terrible happens to that project, at least they've got their interest along the way, and there's something to be said for that. We just don't do it that way. The terms of the loan may differ from lender to lender. Private money lenders mean private. We set up our system the way that's comfortable for us. May not be the same way that Steve sets his up. He does it the way that's comfortable for him. Maureen will do it the way that's comfortable for her. So you have to interview your money lenders too and find out, what are the terms of the deal? What happens if you can't pay it back in 6 months? For us, we'll give you 3-month extensions, but we'll charge you 1 point for that. Otherwise, we don't charge any points. Most of the other lenders you talk to will charge points. It's just the way we set it up, and it's comfortable for us. And then there's services offered. With hard money lenders, you'll find that many of them will offer you additional services. There's one fairly large hard money lender in this area who has an entire construction department, and part of his pitch to you will be, don't worry. If your project gets in trouble, we'll just bring our guys in and we'll finish it up for you. And they will. And they will charge you for that. But at least you'll get your project done. So for a first-time investor, that can be a very comforting thing. So check on what are the services that they offer and what are they going to charge you for it. Okay, seller financing. Don, you know more about seller financing.
Okay, I'm going to take her microphone. Don't get nervous.
It's all right, we're married.
Okay, I'm only going to take a moment to tell you about seller financing. If it's at all possible, when you buy either for buy and hold or buy and flip, if you can get the seller to provide financing for you, and there's a million variations on that, that's your very best deal. We were talking earlier about the idea of subject to. Raise your hand. Anybody know what subject to deals are? Okay, a few, not many. Okay, we've actually done entire workshops just on subject to. I'm not going to go into the details right now, but if you're interested, we have a video on our website. But the point is that if you have a really motivated seller, you can get that seller to when I say finance you, it means that you don't have to pay them at the time you settle. You can pay them out over time, you can pay them at the end, you can pay them when you sell, all kinds of ways of doing it. So when you have a situation with a very motivated seller, simply ask him, would you help finance this project? And then that begins a conversation. That's your best deal if you can get it.
Thank you. Okay, so why not use banks? Banks are in the business of lending. That's what were created for. Why not just go to a bank? Anybody ever tried to go to a bank to get financing on a flip? Banks, quick and easy. What they might do for you is they might give you a line of credit on your house if you own your house free and clear, but they're not going to lend you on a flip for a couple of reasons. First of all, they lend on the value of the property as it is when they find it. They're going to send an appraiser out to your flip. And what do you think they're going to appraise it for? That's not going to help you. They're also not that interested in a short-term loan. They charge much lower interest, but they charge it over a much longer period of time. And they also, charge on the interest, charge on the interest, charge on the interest. That's how banks make their money. They're not going to make any money on you at 4% over 6 months. So they're just not interested. Now, should you develop a relationship with a banker? Sure you should. Because down the line, when you're talking about much bigger properties, multi-unit houses, who was the one talking about a 200-unit? Yeah, when you do 200-unit buildings, once you get it fixed up, you're going to want to refinance that. That's where the banks come in. But for flips, not so much. Okay, so what types of deals? Who would buy that house? Anybody? You could get it, you're laughing. You're laughing, but doesn't it depend? Doesn't it depend on what price you could get it for? So don't say no so fast. All right, so what kind of deals? Well, the deal that Don and I offer is we will finance 100% of the purchase price as long as that purchase price doesn't exceed 60% of the ARV. That should sound familiar to you because it should pretty much be the same formula that you're using when you're evaluating your deals. If you're going to pay much more than 60% of the ARV, unless it's what we call a no-hab, where all it needs is some paint on the walls and maybe a fresh carpet, if you're going to have to actually rehab the house, you can't afford to pay more than 60, possibly 65%. You won't come out with any profit once you add all your other costs in. So we're working off the same formula you are. We're going to do our own comps, just like you're going to do your own comps, and we'll compare notes. We like to think of ourselves as another set of eyes on your project. We are here to help you be successful in your project. We'll be another set of eyes for you. We'll give you the benefit of whatever experience we've had now, over 100 deals. We want you to succeed because, frankly, we'd like to work with what we call serial flippers. We want to do a project with you, and then when that sells, we want to roll that money into your next project, and then we want to roll it into your next project. That's a lot easier for us than going out and meeting new people every single time. And it's easier for you, too, because you'll know where your money's coming from. Okay. There are other people who will finance your some portion of your purchase price and some portion of your rehab. We know one private lender who makes you put in 15% of the price. They make you bring it to the table. My thoughts on that are, you need that for your rehab. I don't want to make you bring money to the table. So that's why I'm providing it. But everybody has their own kind of deal. So talk to lots of lenders. See what kinds of deals that they'll offer you. There are joint ventures. There are people who won't charge you a percentage. They'll put up the money, you put up the work, and then when all the expenses come out at the end, and including the money that you invested, whatever's left over, the profit, you'll split in some way. Maybe it'll be 50-50, maybe it'll be 60-40, whatever you guys agree to. This is relationships between people. So whatever you two can negotiate that you're both good with, then that's the deal you do. What do private lenders look for in a borrower? Well, we look for the same thing that any kind of lender looks for. We look, first and foremost, primarily trustworthiness. If I'm going to be in a deal with you, I want to know I can trust you. What's one of the reasons we spend so much time up front talking to you and finding out about you and getting a feel for you and going to visit some of your projects. If you happen to have a project you're just finishing up, we would love to see that. We'd like to see your attention to detail. We would like to see what you think of as a good job. We'd like to know all of that about you. And again, as I said, we'll probably ask for some references on you. Your knowledge of the deal. When you bring a deal to us, we expect you to know about that deal. We expect you to know about your costs, your numbers, who's going to be your construction guy, how many times have you worked with him, what about the neighborhood, what do you know about that? We want to know that you have fully researched your deal and you know everything about it like you know the back of your hand, because otherwise, whatever you don't know is going to bite you. We want to know your experience. We want to know how many projects you've done and how you made out on them. And we're okay if you did your first project and you lost money on it, because the experience you got from that project will be invaluable to you going forward, much more valuable than if you hit a home run on your first project. We want to know about your team. Don? Don's my team expert. Oh.
So you have to sit there.
I have to sit here?
Okay. So, don't get wrapped up. From our perspective, there are probably 6 members of a team that we want to know that you have or have access to. This is really important. The first member of your team is the person that goes out and finds the deal. We heard before, when people were introducing themselves, the REO process, and so there's lots of ways of finding the deal, but somebody has to do it. That means marketing. That means it means a lot of things, but you have to go find the deal. That's the first team member. The second team member is the person that makes the deal. May not be the same person. Somebody has to negotiate the purchase price based on whatever variables and requirements that the seller has. Second team member. Third team member is somebody's got to find the money or have the money. I think that's what we're talking about here tonight. Fourth is somebody has to be the construction person, ideally the general contractor. Sometimes that's the same person as one of the other ones, but that person has to be identified. And that general contractor has to have access to all of the other subcontractors, and there has to be contract relationships between the subcontractor and the general contractor. I've not been to this subgroup before, and I don't know if you've had discussions on what can go wrong in a contracting relationship, but Are there any contractors in the room? Okay.
Oh, good.
The first three letters of the word contractor are? Okay, so that's really an issue. So the contractor and the whole relationship between general contractor and subcontractor, we want to interview the general contractor, and we want to go see some of his recent projects and really get a chance to understand that skill set. As part of the contracting process, we think the need, especially if you're new to the neighborhood, we think you should have a designer because the designer person, if they know the neighborhood, they'll know how to design the floor plan that's appropriate for that neighborhood. They'll know how to choose the colors of the wall, the colors of the paint, the kind of granite, the color of the granite, the kind of cabinets and so on that are appropriate for the kitchen. We've done deals where they didn't have a designer, and our borrower said to his contract guy, okay, you handle this project, you design it. And he did a wonderful, wonderful job in terms of the workmanship and so on, and he chose cabinets that when you look at them, they were kitchen cabinets. When you look at them, they were really nice, but they had no relationship whatsoever to the neighborhood. And so as a result, they ended up selling the property for, I think, like $15,000 or more under what they should have been able to sell it for. So working with a designer and, of course, having a stager at the end, depending on the price point and the neighborhood and so on, is also very important. And then the final piece is somebody has to sell the project at the end. And that's usually a real estate agent in one form or another. So each of those members of the team are people that we want to know about, meet, talk to, get to know about their background, their skill sets, and their past work. Because without that team, you're not, whether we lend you money or anybody else lends you money, you're not going to be as successful as you would like to be. So that's our idea of team. Okay, did I miss anything?
Nope, you got it. Thank you. All right, and finally, we're going to talk to you about your personal goals. Like I mentioned before, we want to know how big a business you want to make out of flipping, or whether it's just a hobby. And there's no wrong answer to that. We just want to know where your head is at on it. It may change over time, too. All right, preparing to meet a lender. I've talked about some of this. Know your numbers cold. When you present a project to us, we're going to want to see the sheet where you've laid out everything you plan to do to that house, and a line item for each, and how much it's going to cost. We have sat down. We go out to see every property that we invest in. We think it's important to see it in person. We know it's going to be a dog. I mean, we've seen some of the worst. We've been in cat houses. We were in one cat house that was so bad, and I have cats, but this house was so bad. It was the only house that we couldn't actually walk through. We got 10 feet inside, and the odor was so bad. We never saw the kitchen. We never saw the bathroom. And we invested in that property because we knew the people we were investing with, and we knew the person they were going to hire to do the restoration, and we knew it would be okay. It would be a hell of a lot of work, but it'd be okay. And we found out why the smell was so much worse than every other cat house we'd ever been in. We were not only smelling the 16 cats that they found in there alive, and the various things they had done when you don't clean a litter box out for a long time. We also found more than a dozen dead cats in the walls, in ceilings, because they had to pull everything down. You can't really save the floors, everything they had to take up. They were lying under the floorboards dead, and that will create a smell. So we've been in some nasty ones. We don't care about that. We know all of that can be remediated. We want to see the neighborhood it's in. We know if they're in a good neighborhood that when you're finished fixing them up, they're going to sell. And you catch things by going to see the property that you wouldn't catch otherwise. For example, we went to see a property that was in terrible shape. It had foundation problems. It had every problem you could imagine. But we were with an experienced flipper, and we knew he could handle those problems. So that wasn't it. But when we went in, the neighbor in the next yard was standing there waiting for us. And he was a big burly man, and he had a fence, and he had a big dog, and he had surveillance cameras, and he couldn't wait to tell us how bad this neighborhood was. Oh my God, there's prostitution and there's drugs, and in that very house that you're looking at, there was prostitution there, and the one down the street, they sell drugs in that house, and he knew every house in the neighborhood and everything that was bad with it. We went in, we looked at the house, we came out, he was still there, and he was still talking. And I thought to myself, we'll never sell this house. Every person that we buy to take a look at this house is going to run into this neighborhood. So we advised our flipper, maybe we pass on this house. Our flipper was much more persistent than we were. He went to the police station and he said, I hear there's problems in the neighborhood. Is that true? You know, is there prostitution? Is there drugs? And the police said, no, it's a fine neighborhood. That guy that lives next door, he wants to buy that property. Maybe that was the case. In fact, I think it was, because he ultimately, I believe, did buy that property. But do I want that guy next door when my buyers come to look at it? He's not going to be a happy guy. That's the kind of thing you only know when you go to look at a property. All right, so when you come to present a project to us, bring your portfolio. If you can't show us actual properties that you've just finished rehabbing, at least bring your before and after book, so we can get some sense of the kind of work you do. And know your neighborhood. If you know your neighborhood well enough, you know, if you farm a particular neighborhood maybe, and you get to know it really well, then you don't need a designer, because you'll know what's good for that neighborhood. Okay, Steve wanted me to talk about a couple of points, and so I pushed them all into this slide. So, elements of the deal, of course, you need the good project. He wanted me to talk about collateral. What other kinds of collateral would we take? Well, if you've done your job right and we've done our job right in analyzing this project, we shouldn't need any other collateral other than the house, because the house is going to be 60% of the ARV or better. However, we have sometimes run into situations where a flipper that we work with a lot, and we like him and he does good work, he wants something toward the renovation costs, which we don't normally do. In those cases, if he has another property that's free and clear, we'll take a first mortgage on that and lend him the additional money. So think a little laterally when you think about collateral. You may not be talking just about the house that is your central project. We've done that on a house where we didn't think it was worth the ARV that our investor thought it was, but they were adamant. They knew the neighborhood and they could get that price, but we weren't sure. So we put a mortgage on that property, and we put a mortgage on another property that they had for additional collateral. We don't really want your car. We would rather not have the house you're living in, because we don't want to put you out of your house. But if you have some other property that has enough collateral in it, you can put that, you can add it toward the project. Okay, paperwork. We take a mortgage, we take a promissory note, and we also take a deed in escrow. Does anybody know what a deed in escrow is? Swell. Okay, here's how this works. When you go to the closing to buy your property, you're going to get a deed transferring that property from the seller to you. That deed gets recorded in the Recorder of Deeds office, and that's how everybody in the world knows that the property belongs to you. At that same closing, you're going to sign another deed that transfers the property from you to us. That deed does not get recorded at the Recorder of Deeds office. That gets put in the hands of an escrow agent, and it just sits there for the duration of the project. If, God forbid, something goes wrong with that project and we would otherwise have to foreclose on that property, we can get around the foreclosure by going to court and getting a judgment, presenting that judgment to the escrow agent. She releases that deed to us. We file it, record it at the courthouse, and now the transfer has been made in a much more efficient and simple way. In 100 projects, it has never come up. We have never had a failed project that required us to take a property. And I wouldn't ever want to do it because I had one property once. I was the world's worst landlord. I never want to do it again. So we will work with our borrowers. If they run into trouble, and some of them have, we'll work with them to try to get them straightened out and out of trouble. We just want that project to get completed, and we want it to get sold. And I should tell you that out of 100 projects, at the end of the project, when we're at the closing for the sale of the property, not a single person has ever remembered to ask for that deed back. Okay. Loan fees. Well, we talked a little about that. Depending on the kind of lender that you're working with, you're going to have various associated loan fees. Some of them are going to charge you points up front. Some of them are going to charge you application fees and appraisal fees and all of that. We don't do any of that. Some people do, so you have to ask. What happens during the loan? Well, as I told you, we defer the payments to the end of the loan. Other people will demand that you pay your interest monthly as you go along. Some of them will even ask you to pay the interest and some of the principal as you go along. So you have to get that straight up front. Inspections, if you're borrowing renovation monies, your lender is not just going to give you a big lump of money and say, call me when it's done. They're going to set up a system of draws. And first, you're going to have to spend some of your own money. Then you'll call them in and say, we've reached this benchmark. They'll send somebody over to inspect the work. And if they're happy with the work that you've done, they'll reimburse you for that. And then you go to the next level, and you reach the next benchmark, and you call them in, and they send the inspector, who you pay for, and then they'll reimburse you for that. But they'll always be ahead of you when it comes to renovation money. Okay, and ending the loan, well, that's paperwork again. We go to the closing to sell the house. We give you a satisfaction of the debt, which is recorded at the recorder of deeds. That ends your debt to us. It ends the lien against the property. And you sign all the sale documents to pass it on to your buyer. So here's the process for working with us. Start a relationship. We're going to get together. We're going to spend several hours talking. You'll take us to show us some properties if you can. View the property when you have a project. Then we'll go back and we'll sit down at the Starbucks or wherever. We'll go through all the numbers. We'll make sure that they match. You'd be surprised. We've worked with some very experienced flippers, and they get excited about a property, and they kind of forget some of the things on their list. We've had people tell us that it's going to be a $40,000 renovation. We sit down and we go through the list with them, and we tell them to assign the numbers. We don't assign the numbers to what each thing costs. Came out to a $70,000 renovation. It was good to know that up front. We'll review the numbers, then I'll send you all the documents, and I don't charge you for writing up the documents because it's not that hard to do. You'll review them. If you're happy with them, you'll send them on to your title agent. We'll all show up at the title company, sign some papers, bing, done. All of that can be done in a matter of a day or two once we know you. It'll take you longer to get your title insurance than it will for us to get the money to you if you're in a big rush. Okay, so when good loans go bad, Steve wanted me to tell you about some of our deals that were bad deals. And I'd like to, except we haven't had a bad deal. We have had some troublesome deals, and I can tell you about those. Most of the troublesome deals we've had were entirely our fault because we didn't stick to our protocol. We didn't do our due diligence. That's when the trouble happens. The only deal that we've ever had that really wasn't our fault was we were dealing with a team, two guys, both of them lovely guys. One was in charge of the actual construction, and the other was in charge of all the other things, finding the property, negotiating the property, all of that. The guy who was in charge of the contracting got divorced. And his mind left his body for a number of months. and they had to break up their partnership because the guy was so distraught. And that left the completion of the property in the hands of the guy who didn't do the construction. That was a problem. It took him 15 months to complete that project. And we felt real bad for him because it cost him a lot of money for his loan, but stuff happens. Otherwise, you know, the worst one we ever had was a guy we thought we knew pretty well. He came to all the dig meetings. He came when our Central Buck subgroup was 4 people sitting in a pizza place. He was one of the 4. I mean, he was there right from the beginning. And we asked around, and people said, oh, him, oh, yeah, he's a good guy. You know, well, we should have defined our terms better. We should have figured out what a good guy is. He turned out to be the worst construction contractor flipper guy ever in the history of the world. He hired somebody to do the construction, and then he never showed up for the next 5 months. He put it on the market, and it wasn't a completed project yet. I mean, it was terrible. We came in to check out the property, and we walked around, and Don just, oh, by the way, flipped the light switch on. None of the lights in the house worked, except for the one in the front foyer, which was on, and there was no way to turn it off. So that took a little work to get straightened out. I became the GC for a while, but we got it done. We got it all done. We got it sold. Everybody got their money. And he's just not one of the people we work with anymore. So I'd like to tell you better stories about horror projects, but the truth of the matter is not plastic. We've never had one. And with that, let me just say to you, how do you start a loan with us? Contact us. So, any questions? Don, why don't you come here, because I'm going to need your help with the questions.
You mentioned that you go and look at the properties, blah, blah, blah. That means you would never consider something out of the area.
We try to limit ourselves to a 1-hour radius, more or less, of where we live, only because we don't want to drive farther than that. But we have come out to the main line. We've gone up to Bethlehem. We've gone down as...
Not in another state.
No, I don't know nothing about other states. You know, all of this stuff is contractual, so it's all state-led. And I don't know about the laws in other states, so we stay. But I know people who do. We know lenders who lend in Chicago and Florida and all over the place. They never see the properties. They might do a Google Map search, I guess, but they're comfortable with that.
Private lenders or
private lenders?
Yeah, actually, to take that a step further, we get requests you can imagine all the time for everything you can imagine. Let me grab the microphone.
Yeah.
And often they are in places that we don't lend to, but we do our very best to find another lender, because our mission is to make sure that the flipper, the borrower or prospect, gets serviced properly. So we know lots of lenders. Sometimes they can help, sometimes they can't, but at least we do our best to make sure that if you have a legitimate request, we'll try to help you find somebody.
And maybe when you have one in our neighborhood, you'll come back. Any other questions? Maureen?
I have a question. When you stated that you do inspections, do you personally do the inspections, or do you have like home inspectors do the inspections, or do you have like an appraiser or someone else do the inspections on those homes?
Well, we don't lend on the renovations, so we don't have to do inspections. But for the people who do, yes, they generally hire a contractor or somebody they can trust who's knowledgeable about contracting to go in and take a look.
So then during that vending period, you don't inspect the home at all after the first inspection?
Well, we need to.
Yeah.
All right. We need to clarify the term inspection. So we go, as Marty explained, we go through a rather detailed, what we'll call inspection process at the very beginning, to look at the property, look at the neighborhood, and so on. So if you want to call that inspection, you can. But then once the project begins and work begins, since we don't lend on the renovation, we don't have to go in and say, the plumbing is done right or wrong, the electrical is done right or wrong. We don't do that. The borrower does that, or depending on whether he's using his own money for renovation, he or she is using their own money for renovation, or they're borrowing from other people, the need for an inspector varies. However, we do visit the property from time to time just to see how things are going and if there's anything we can do to help. So if there's an actual inspection required in order to release draw money, then those are usually professional inspectors. One of the reasons we don't invest in the renovation is because if our inspector says the plumbing is wrong and your plumber says the plumbing is right,
We don't want to get
we don't want to get into that argument. Now, at the end of the day, your inspector wins because you've got the money, but we just don't want to get involved in that sort of thing. So does that answer your question? Okay.
We'll also get together with our borrowers every month or a couple of months just to touch base. Say, how's the project coming? What else you got coming down the pike? We try to keep a relationship going there.
Yeah, in the back. Repeat the question.
Have I ever done any lending to someone who's looking for a rental? Rarely.
Wait. What do you mean is looking for a rental?
You mean a buy and hold property?
Instead of buying salary right away, they want to hold it for rent.
Right.
Okay.
So what's the difference in what you're looking for if you have done that?
Okay. Let me try to answer that. The question was, do we ever fund anybody that's buying a property? Let me make sure I understand your question correctly. Buying a property, fixing it up, right? And then renting it out at the end. Okay. So presumably you're going to buy a property that's in terrible condition. You're going to fix it up to whatever level you consider rentable, and then you're going to rent it out, right? So yes, we will be, and we've done several of these. We're happy to be the short-term lender for you to get through the renovation process. And then at the end, once you find a tenant, you now theoretically, depending on your credit and all the other factors, you can go to a bank and get it refinanced out. And if you do it right, you should be able to get nearly 100% of all of your costs from the bank to refi out. Now you have a rental property bringing in rental income where you have nearly, if not nearly, none of your cash in the actual project. Now, of course, you have to pay mortgage, blah, 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 but
You pay that out of the rent.
But you pay that out of the rent. So you have a positive cash flow property. So yes, we've done deals like that.
But we really want to make sure that you've got your plan B in place, because the last thing you want to do is get to the end of your project, find out you can't refinance it, and continue to pay us 15%.
Yeah, we would probably ask you to arrange with a bank ahead of time. If you meet these conditions, X, Y, Z, that bank will provide you with a refinancing loan. And hopefully you have that relationship in place already. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yeah.
How often do the lenders ask to extend the term and you charge for that?
Not that often, because most of our borrowers are in the first-time home buyer market, the lowest end. And we figure 3 months to renovate, 3 months to sell. And most of them are able to do it in that time frame. I would say it's a very low percentage, maybe less than 10%.
Right. And if we know going in it's going to be 7 months or 8 months, we'll just negotiate that.
We'll just make that the term of the loan,
Does that answer your question? Okay. And over there.
I know you don't.
Hello, Paula.
Hi, John. I know you don't do draws, but since you guys know other people who do, I'm just kind of curious how this typically structured. Because when I think of inspectors, I think of like a use and occupancy of Pottstown. We can wait 6 weeks on the inspector shows up at the house. How long typically is that? Is that something in the contract that when you say you're ready for an inspection for your next draw, they agree they'll show up within so many days, but it's not starting the project? Like, how does that?
That's a real good question to ask.
Repeat the question.
The question was, how long do you generally have to wait once you've met your benchmark on your renovation to get the inspector over there to approve it so you can get your draw? It's a real good question to ask. I would make sure you ask the lender who's going to be lending you the renovation money, and I try to write it into your contract with them too.
We'll
Sorry?
We do advances on our.
Oh, advances.
Yeah.
Advances, so we can speak that way.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the guys that we know that do the draws, as Marty said, it's all written into the contract. It shouldn't take more than a day or two or three at the most, because like you said, it's costing you money, and nobody wants that to happen negatively. But as Marty said, make sure it's part of the contract. And you might be off by a day or two, but it shouldn't be 6 weeks.
I'm sure Steve will address that.
Yeah. By the way, the reason I asked to repeat the question is because this microphone does not pick up anybody's voice in the room, and we want it to
It goes straight to the camera.
It goes straight to the camera.
Any other questions?
In your presentation, I saw that you lent to serial killers. Do you lend to new flippers?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Seasonal flippers. Do you lend to new flippers as well?
Sure. Because,
Newbies, you start about.
yes, do we lend to, was your question, do we lend to brand new flippers, or do we lend to people who only flip one or two a year? Brand new flippers? It depends. Like every answer in the law, it depends. For us, it depends on what your background is. If you've just spent 15 years as the construction manager for Toll Brothers, then you probably know how to do this stuff, even if you've never done one for yourself. But if you've been the general manager of Giant, you may not have the experience that we would be looking for on a first-time project.
And of the 100 or so deals we've done to date, we just lent money to what you would call a newbie. However, it was a three-person partnership. The construction guy of the partnership had done, 100 or some odd renovations for other flippers. So he was really experienced at the actual construction work. And so far they're doing a terrific job. Besides, in that particular case, you remember Marty said that we'll do 60% of the ARV. This particular property, I think, was 40. They bought it for 40% or something like that of the ARV. So there was so much headroom that they would really have to screw it up to lose money. So we had a lot of factors going for us. So in that particular case, we did it. But generally, we would rather point you to what people call a hard money lender, who will be happy to lend you money, but it'll cost you a little bit more. Do a couple of those, learn how to do it, and then come see us.
Well, I, for one, am really interested to hear what Steve has to say. So I think we should let him get up here and say it. And if we have any time left over after him and you still have questions, we'll be here to answer them for you.